The early light of dawn broke over a city still steeped in the heavy silence of yesterday's sorrows. In a modest apartment tucked away on a quiet side street, Elena stirred from fitful sleep, her body carrying the silent burdens of her past. The room, dimly lit by the first hesitant rays of sunlight, felt both safe and haunted, a fragile sanctuary where memories of abuse intermingled with a hope for a better future. Elena's eyes, once dulled by a life filled with constant dread, now shimmered with a cautious spark of resilience as she welcomed the new day. At the foot of her small bed lay her steadfast guardian, a Pitbull named Titan, with a coat that shimmered in various shades of gray and eyes that burned with an intelligence both fierce and compassionate. Titan was more than a pet, he was the embodiment of unwavering loyalty and silent strength. His presence had transformed the apartment into a safe haven, a place where Elena could dare to dream of a life free from the oppressive weight of fear. Every morning, as Titan rested his massive head on Elena's foot, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for his quiet companionship, a reminder that healing could come in forms both unexpected and extraordinary. Titan's story was not one of wild aggression, as many had once presumed about his breed, but rather one of profound empathy and inner courage. From the moment he bounded into Elena's life, a stray abandoned on the cold streets, it was clear that Titan possessed an innate understanding of human pain. His soulful eyes seemed to communicate a silent promise, that as long as he remained by her side, she would never be alone in the fight against the shadows of her past. Over time, as Elena began to rebuild the shattered fragments of her identity, Titan became both her shield and her guide, a constant reminder that strength could be found in vulnerability and love in the most unexpected places. The early weeks of their journey together had been a delicate dance of rediscovery and trust. Elena, once ensnared in the cycle of abuse that left her isolated and broken, slowly found solace in Titan's unwavering devotion. The once dim corridors of her heart began to brighten with the possibility of a future where safety and self-respect were not privileges but rights. On quiet afternoons, as soft rays of sunlight filtered through the window and danced upon the worn hardwood floor, Elena would find herself sharing whispered secrets with Titan. In those gentle moments, every word, every tear shed in the quiet intimacy of shared solitude, reinforced a bond that transcended the ordinary. There were days when the memories of violence would surge unbidden, a tidal wave of fear threatening to drown her in its relentless fury. In those moments, Titan's silent vigilance was all the comfort Elena needed. Without a word, his large, warm presence was enough to anchor her trembling spirit. Whether it was the sound of a distant car engine or a sudden unexpected noise that stirred dormant memories of danger, Titan's alert eyes and steady stance reminded her that she was never truly unprotected. His protective instincts, honed over countless days of devoted companionship, had an almost preternatural ability to sense when her inner turmoil reached its peak. It was as if he could feel the subtle shifts in her heartbeat, the way the light in her eyes dimmed, and then, with a quiet determination, he positioned himself between her and any looming threat, even if that threat existed only in the recesses of her mind. Outside the walls of the apartment, the city was awakening, unaware of the quiet battle unfolding within one of its many homes. The early morning hustle was a distant murmur compared to the intimate world Elena and Titan had built together. Yet, in the back of her mind, Elena knew that the serenity of their sanctuary was fragile. The scars of her past were a constant reminder that danger could resurface at any moment. There were nights when the terror of an abusive return haunted her dreams, a chilling premonition of what could happen if her past ever found a way to encroach upon her newfound peace. It was on such nights that Titan's role took on an even deeper significance. As the hours grew late and shadows lengthened, his vigilant presence was a steadfast promise that she would be given precious moments to gather the strength to act, to reach out to those who could help her reclaim her life. In the gentle, early hours of one particularly quiet morning, as a soft drizzle began to tap on the windowpane, Elena sat by the open window, lost in a tapestry of memories both painful and beautiful. The soft patter of raindrops blended with the rhythmic thumping of her heart, a sound that had once raced uncontrollably in moments of terror but now beat steadily, like a metronome marking the pace of recovery. Titan lay nearby, his ears twitching at every sound, his eyes scanning the room with a focused tenderness that belied his imposing stature. In that moment, the room felt charged with a quiet energy, the promise of renewal and the tacit understanding that sometimes the bravest battles were fought in the silent spaces between words. Elena recalled the first day she had brought Titan home, a day marked by uncertainty and a lingering sense of vulnerability. The animal shelter had been filled with countless eyes, each one pleading for love and care. But it was Titan who had met her gaze with a quiet intensity that seemed to cut through the noise. Despite the many stories of his breed's misinterpretations and the stereotypes that often painted Pitbulls as symbols of aggression, Titan's demeanor was one of gentle understanding and unyielding protection. It was as if, in that fateful moment, he had recognized in her a kindred spirit, a soul scarred by life's harshest trials yet still yearning for a chance at redemption. As days turned into weeks, Titan's behavior revealed layers of complexity that went far beyond the simple role of a pet. His actions became a language of their own, a nuanced dialogue of glances, gentle nudges, and the soft, reassuring thump of his tail. In moments of quiet introspection, Elena would speak softly to him about the challenges she faced, about the fears that threatened to pull her back into the darkness from which she was emerging. And Titan, with his attentive eyes and unwavering gaze, would listen, his presence a silent vow that no matter how turbulent the journey, he would be there to ward off the approaching storms. Their bond extended beyond the confines of their small apartment. Elena found that the simple act of walking Titan in the early hours of the morning had become a ritual of renewal, a time to breathe in the crisp, cool air and to remind herself that life could be gentle once more. In the quiet solitude of the park, amidst dew-covered grass and the soft murmur of waking birds, Titan would trot beside her with a measured grace. His presence seemed to transform the space around them, creating a bubble of safety that shielded them from the harsh judgments of a world that sometimes failed to understand the silent battles fought behind closed doors. There was a particular morning when the city was draped in a fine veil of mist, and every sound was muted as if the world itself was holding its breath. Elena had barely stepped out of the apartment when her heart skipped a beat, a sense of impending unease prickled along her skin. In that fleeting moment of uncertainty, Titan's body tensed, his eyes fixed on something just beyond the veil of fog. A chill ran down her spine as she realized that his heightened alertness might be a signal of something more than just a stray noise or an overactive imagination. The memory of past horrors, where the return of an abuser had shattered the delicate equilibrium of safety, surged within her. Yet, even in that moment of fear, she felt a profound trust in Titan's judgment, a trust that urged her to remain calm and to let the silent guardian do what he did best, protect without hesitation. Elena had learned that Titan's protective instincts were not mere reflexes but the culmination of an unspoken promise, a promise etched into every heartbeat, every step, and every shared moment of quiet understanding. It was a promise that, when danger loomed, he would not hesitate to stand between her and the threat. And indeed, in the days that followed that foggy morning, a faint, disquieting feeling settled in the back of her mind. There were hints, subtle yet unmistakable, that someone from her past was testing the fragile boundaries of her newfound sanctuary. A shadow in the periphery, a lingering sense of being watched, or a soft echo of footsteps in the hallway. Each sign was a stark reminder that the cycle of abuse might not be entirely broken. In those hours of unease, Titan's role transcended that of a mere companion. He became a living embodiment of resilience, a creature whose quiet strength and fierce loyalty offered Elena the time and space she needed to seek help. His eyes, alight with an unspoken warning, would track every movement near the door, every unexpected creak in the floorboards. It was as if he had an almost supernatural ability to sense the shift in energy that preceded danger. Elena, too, became more attuned to these subtle signals, learning to interpret Titan's language of vigilance as a precursor to action. With each passing day, the bond between them deepened, fortified by the shared experiences of overcoming darkness and nurturing the fragile shoots of hope. As the day advanced and the mist finally began to lift, Elena returned home with a bittersweet mixture of relief and trepidation. The quiet walk had reaffirmed her belief in the possibility of a future free from the shadows of her past. Yet it also underscored the reality that the remnants of that darkness still lingered at the edges. Inside her apartment, the familiar, comforting environment awaited her, a space marked by small tokens of recovery, a stack of carefully chosen books on healing, a potted plant reaching towards the window in silent determination, and, most importantly, Titan, whose steady presence filled the room with a warmth that defied the chill of isolation. In the quiet sanctuary of her home, as twilight began to merge with the deep blue of early night, Elena settled into a well-worn armchair. Titan, ever watchful, lay at her feet, his breathing slow and rhythmic. In that moment, the apartment was not just a shelter from past horrors but a canvas upon which she could begin to paint a new life. A life where hope and safety were not fleeting illusions but tangible realities. The shadows that had once threatened to overrun her existence were now held at bay by the silent sentinel who stood guard. A reminder that love and protection could be found even in the most battered of hearts. This day, like every other since Titan had entered her life, was a testament to the transformative power of unwavering companionship. It was a quiet declaration that despite the scars inflicted by a life marred by violence, healing was possible. With every shared glance and every tender moment of solace, Elena was slowly reclaiming her narrative, a narrative not defined by the cruelty of her past, but by the strength she found in the steadfast loyalty of her beloved Pitbull. In the lingering silence of that evening, as stars began to prick the dark canvas of the sky, Elena allowed herself a moment of introspection. She acknowledged the enormity of her journey, the painful steps that had led her from the depths of despair to the cautious optimism of now. And in that reflective pause, she understood that Titan was not just a protector in the physical sense, but a healer of spirits, a living reminder that even in the aftermath of cruelty, compassion and resilience could thrive. The night deepened, and as the city around her settled into quiet slumber, the promise of tomorrow remained a beacon of hope. Elena closed her eyes, comforted by the reassuring presence of Titan at her side, ready to face whatever challenges might come. Their bond, forged in the crucible of shared suffering and mutual care, had become a lifeline, a silent, steadfast vow that together, they could navigate the darkness and embrace the dawn of a future filled with the promise of renewal. And so, in the stillness of that night, the first chapter of their journey closed, a chapter marked by the emergence of trust, the discovery of inner strength, and the undeniable truth that sometimes, the smallest acts of loyalty can ignite the brightest sparks of hope. The night was unusually still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Elena's home, once a fragile sanctuary, had grown into a fortress of quiet determination, each corner imbued with the memories of survival and the promise of renewal. In the days following her increasingly vivid dreams of past horrors, a subtle tension had begun to weave itself into the fabric of her daily life. There were moments when the soft patter of rain against the window, or the whisper of wind through the trees, would trigger a deep, instinctual alertness, and in those moments, Titan's presence became more than just a comfort. It was an unmistakable reminder that the darkness of her past could be held at bay by loyalty and love. One crisp autumn evening, as the city prepared to surrender to night's embrace, an uneasy feeling settled over Elena. The gentle hum of urban life seemed to fade, replaced by an anticipatory silence that prickled the senses. Elena found herself pacing the living room, her eyes darting to the door with each muted sound. Titan, ever attuned to her emotional cadence, mirrored her unease. His ears pricked forward and his dark eyes glowed with a vigilant intensity that had become their shared language of caution. As the clock on the wall neared midnight, a sound, a faint creak, almost imperceptible, broke the silence. Elena's heart lurched. In that split second, every long-forgotten fear surged back, the terror of an abuser's return, the dread of being caught in a cycle that she had fought so hard to break. Titan was instantly on alert, his massive form shifting as he moved closer to the door, positioning himself like a silent sentinel ready to ward off any threat. A shadow loomed outside, indistinct and unnerving. Elena's trembling hands reached for her phone, her mind racing as she considered her next steps. In that critical moment, Titan's protective instincts surged to the forefront. The door handle turned ever so slightly, and with a quiet but resolute snarl, Titan placed himself directly in the path of the intruder. His deep, steady growl was not one of aggression for aggression's sake. It was a primal declaration that Elena's sanctuary was fiercely guarded. The intruder hesitated, caught off guard by the unexpected barrier. Titan's posture was formidable, low, poised, and unmistakably resolute, as if he had read every unspoken warning in the language of past pain and present courage. In that charged instant, Elena found the strength to step back into the shadow of her own resilience. With shaking fingers, she dialed the number for the authorities, her voice barely a whisper as she explained the situation. The line crackled with urgency, and every second felt like an eternity. Outside, the confrontation escalated. The figure at the door, a person whose intentions were darkly reminiscent of old nightmares, paused, clearly weighing the cost of pushing further against the unwavering force of Titan's determination. The Pitbull's eyes, reflecting the muted glow of the streetlight, bore into the intruder with an intensity that left no room for negotiation. It was not merely a display of physical might, but a testament to a deeper, more profound shield, the bond between a survivor and her guardian. A bond forged in the crucible of adversity and tempered by the fierce desire to reclaim a life worth living. The intruder, now visibly unsettled, stepped back as if physically recoiling from the quiet storm of defiance that emanated from Titan. With a final, conflicted glance, the shadow retreated, disappearing into the labyrinthine alleys of the night. In that moment, as the faint sound of approaching sirens reached their ears, a profound silence fell over the home. The confrontation had been a collision of past terrors and present resolve. And in its aftermath, Elena felt an overwhelming mixture of relief and cautious hope. Titan, still standing guard by the door, slowly relaxed his tense stance. Yet his eyes remained alert, a silent promise that vigilance would never falter as long as he was there. Elena knelt beside him, her fingers gently brushing against the coarse fur that had, for so long, been a barrier between her and the cruelty of the world. In that touch, there was an unspoken gratitude, a wordless thank you for a lifetime of shared struggles and triumphs. In the quiet that followed, Elena sat by the window, the glow of the streetlights painting soft halos on the walls of her home. The city outside continued its nocturnal rhythm, unaware of the battle that had just been waged within one small apartment. But for Elena, every sound, every shadow, and every heartbeat was a reminder of how far she had come. Her journey from despair to cautious optimism was etched into the very air she breathed. A delicate balance between fear and freedom. As the night deepened and the emergency responders secured the premises, Elena's thoughts turned inward. She recalled the long, painful path that had brought her here, a journey marred by isolation, heartbreak, and the relentless cycle of abuse. And yet, through it all, a quiet revolution had been unfolding. With Titan by her side, she had not only learned to survive but had begun to reclaim the narrative of her life. Each scar, each tear, had transformed into a symbol of resilience, a silent ode to the indomitable human spirit that could rise, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. In the days that followed, Elena would come to understand that healing was not a linear process but an ever-evolving tapestry of setbacks and breakthroughs. The incident that night, though terrifying, had reaffirmed something fundamental: the strength of the human heart, when supported by unwavering love and loyalty, could defy the remnants of even the most painful pasts. Titan's intervention was more than just a physical barrier against an intruder. It was a manifestation of the protective force that resided within every survivor, a reminder that sometimes the act of defending oneself could be a powerful catalyst for transformation. Neighbors, too, began to notice the quiet shift in the air around Elena's home. The once muted apartment now exuded a sense of cautious optimism, its windows reflecting the light of a hope that had been rekindled. Friends and support groups marveled at the changes, recognizing that the story of one woman and her pitbull was emblematic of a much larger truth: that in the wake of domestic violence, recovery was a mosaic of small victories, each one contributing to a life reimagined. For Elena, each day became a deliberate act of defiance against a past that sought to define her. She attended counseling sessions, joined community groups, and slowly began to let the warmth of genuine connection seep into the corners of her heart. Titan remained a constant presence through every step. Whether in the quiet moments of reflection at sunrise or during the anxious hours of uncertainty when the memory of that fateful night resurfaced, his loyalty was unyielding, a steady reminder that even the deepest wounds could be soothed by the kindness and courage of those who cared enough to stand by her side. The transformation within Elena was mirrored by a growing sense of empowerment. The courage that had once been buried under layers of fear and shame now shone through in her actions and decisions. She began to advocate for herself and others, sharing her story in support groups and speaking out against the injustice of abuse. In doing so, she became a beacon of hope for those still trapped in the cycle of violence. A living testament to the possibility of renewal and the power of unconditional support. Over time, the specter of that threatening night became a catalyst for change, a moment that crystallized her resolve to never allow history to repeat itself. The police investigation, though necessary and rigorous, served not only as a means to ensure her safety but also as a turning point that reaffirmed her right to live without fear. With each passing day, the memories of the terror that had once defined her existence gradually faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of a life reclaimed through courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between a survivor and her guardian. In the soft glow of a new dawn, Elena stood at her window, the cool morning air carrying with it the promise of a future filled with possibility. Titan lay curled at her feet, a silent partner in her journey towards healing and empowerment. Together, they had weathered storms that had threatened to shatter the fragile peace of her soul. And as the first light of day crept over the horizon, it painted the room with hues of hope, a vivid reminder that every ending was, in fact, the beginning of something profoundly new. Elena's eyes, once shadowed by the weight of unspeakable pain, now sparkled with the light of determination. In her heart, she knew that the road ahead would not always be smooth. There would be days when old wounds might reopen, when the echoes of past abuse would attempt to steal away the peace she had fought so hard to build. But in those moments, she could look to Titan and find the reassurance that she was not alone, that somewhere within the depths of her being resided a strength that was unyielding and eternal. As weeks turned into months, the transformative power of Titan's companionship became an enduring legacy in Elena's life. His silent guardianship had transcended the role of a mere pet. He was her guardian, her confidant, and the living symbol of the resilience that flourished in the aftermath of trauma. Every shared glance, every gentle nudge, reinforced a truth that was both simple and profound. Love, in its purest form, had the power to heal, protect, and transform lives. In community meetings and support circles, Elena recounted the story of that fateful night with a mixture of humility and fierce pride. She spoke not only of the terror that had gripped her but of the courage that had risen in response, a courage that had been embodied by a Pitbull with a heart as fierce as any human's. Her words resonated with those who had once felt trapped in the cycle of abuse. And slowly, a network of solidarity blossomed around her. In sharing her journey, Elena helped others to recognize that the path to healing was often paved with unexpected allies. And that even in the depths of despair, the promise of a new beginning could be found. Now, as the city bustled with the steady rhythm of life and the seasons shifted imperceptibly from one to the next, Elena's home stood as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. It was a place where hope had taken root, nurtured by the unwavering loyalty of a Pitbull who had once been astray, and by a woman who had, against all odds, chosen to rise above the darkness. In every corner of that home, there was a story of survival, of quiet defiance, and of the transformative power of unconditional love. In the final analysis, the journey that had begun with terror and isolation had blossomed into a narrative of redemption and resilience. Elena understood, with a clarity that only hardship can impart, that healing was not a destination but an ongoing process, a delicate interplay of courage, support, and the persistent belief in one's right to a life of dignity and joy. Titan, with every alert glance and every tender moment of vigilance, had helped her rediscover that truth. He was not just her protector in times of imminent danger, he was a guardian of her spirit. A constant reminder that every act of bravery, no matter how small, was a victory in itself. As the final light of day faded and the soft hues of twilight embraced the home, Elena and Titan settled into the comforting routine of the night. The quiet murmur of distant city sounds provided a gentle backdrop to their thoughts, each moment steeped in the understanding that while the past might cast long shadows, the future was hers to reclaim. And in that reclaimed future, Every step was a testament to the power of love. Every heartbeat a tribute to the indomitable will to survive and flourish. In that serene, concluding moment, the silence was not empty, it was filled with the unspoken promise of tomorrow. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of Titan's breathing beside her, and allowed herself to dream of a future unburdened by fear. A future where every new day was a chance to embrace life with courage and hope. The final chapter of this journey was not an end, but a profound beginning, a living, breathing declaration that even after the darkest of nights, the dawn always arrives, and with it, the promise of a reclaimed, resilient life.